Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another video. This video, I'm going to introduce the concept of fixed stars. From my previous video, the Algol Mars-Uranus palaver that we are moving through, a lot of questions came through in the comments around fixed stars. So it made me realize that for many of you, some of you, none of you, maybe the fixed stars are a very new concept for you astrologically. It's a bit disappointing actually, because I think the fixed stars are such an imperative part of your astrological toolkit. So much so that they're actually very early on in my astrology program, the contemporary astrology program. So if you do want a deep dive into the fixed stars, I do that in the contemporary astrology program. Last month, I did open that for enrollment. I'm still accepting enrollments, a few stragglers, but if you are wanting to learn astrology, you might be particularly interested in fixed stars, I would recommend that. If you're wanting more of the Reader's Digest version of fixed stars, well, I do have a webinar on that too. And that is on my website. So if you go into Learn Astrology tab, recorded classes and webinars, it's pretty much up the top there. So that's actually a webinar I presented to Adam Allenbass at Nightlight Astrology. So that's a recording from there where we go into a few of the fixed stars and help you get started in learning about them there. So there's a couple of resources to get started learning about them. If you need a book, that's a good question, because from my experience, fixed stars books are not terribly helpful until I found this one. This is Fixed Stars in the Natal Chart, or in the Chart, Constellations, Lunar Mansions and Mythology by Oscar Hoffman. The publisher is the Wessex Astrologer. Now, I don't know how I found this book, where I got obviously ordered online, but I don't know how I came across it, but I'm so glad that I did. As you can see, there's quite a few post-its in there. Obviously, it's a book loaded with imagery, with mythology and lore, which the fixed stars are based upon. But what's extra helpful is that, say, for example, you're thinking, oh, okay, well, I've got this client, she's got a planet at early Pisces, formal hole. What's that all about again? And you can just use this as a quick keyword reference guide, which is super, super helpful. So I really like that book for that. So, oh, and a couple of other resources. If fixed stars is something that you're very curious about and maybe want to work with it in a more, with the energies of the fixed stars in a more magical way, is that there's fixed star magic. So talismans for wealth, health, protection, abundance, success, all sorts of things. If that's something that you're into, who I would recommend, who my clients have had brilliant results from, Michael Ofek and Christopher Warnock. So that's if you're wanting to go all in on the fixed stars and do something from a talismanic magical perspective. But for us, we're just going to have a little bit of a look at the fixed stars to give you a little bit of an entry point into their wisdom. And I do really suggest that you think about the fixed stars, potentially adopt them. So at least maybe half a dozen to a dozen, memorize the degrees. So for example, you might come across a client or a chart. You may have a planet at around 12 Virgo, and not 12 Virgo, sorry, 12 Scorpio. And that's one that always registers to me when I come across with somebody with a planet or an angle there, maybe 15 Capricorn. And these are just little placements that, if you rely on the sign and the planet in of itself, you're going to miss a big part of the story. And this is exactly what the fixed stars provide us. But first, let's have a look at how or why they even provide that for us. So I am going to open up my slide here. It's just basically got an image of the solar system from the viewpoint of the ancient world. Some of you have probably seen this before. Some of you may have not. So basically, it's the geocentric model with the Earth at the center. So the Earth's in the middle, and then we have the elements all around, the 4 elements. Then we have the planets from the closest and the fastest up through to the slowest and the most further away. And so they're our wandering stars, our planets that move from signs, some of them retrograde. Obviously, the sun and the moon don't. So we have the wandering stars tend to show us the unfoldment of excitement and drama and problems in our lives. And we're all, I'm sure, quite familiar with that. And so we were born in a point of time where the wandering stars were dancing, and that describes our life. But above and beyond that, we have what's known as the firmament, and that's where the fixed stars live. And so the fixed stars are exactly that. They're fixed, unlike the wandering. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of a sense of the difference. The fixed stars do not move. I mean, yes, they do, but we're looking at about an average of 1 degree per 72 years. They are super, super slow. So over the course of a human lifetime, they don't move. That being said, we did have not only just a degree movement, but we also had a sign change, which is super, super rare. And that was back in, I think, 2011, possibly 12, but I feel pretty confident it was 11. And that was when the fixed star of Regulus moved from 29 Leo to 0 Virgo. So basically, the fixed stars don't move, but the planets will dance under them. And so this gives us an indication that there's an eminence or a prominence about the fixed stars. And in a sense, they are our celestial big daddies. They're our celestial overlords. And because they don't really move and they're so, so far away, like we think Saturn's far, wait till you get to the fixed stars. They're just a whole new realm. So they are quite untouchable in a way. And this makes them divine and holy. So the fixed stars are embedded into the firmament, and they're as close as we can get to this divine empyrean. So Dante described the fixed stars as, or, basically the sky, the vaster a body is, the greater its virtue. And so the fixed stars do speak to the spheres of God. There are many, many cultures, philosophies, ancient religions, and spirituality that see stars as gods. And the sphere of God is about obtaining the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. So if you do have experience or exposure to various forms of magic, Kabbalah, etc., you will be very familiar with that idea. And so because they are so vast and angel-like or next realm-like, it's really difficult to be available to them or have them available to us. It's like trying to develop a relationship with something so unimaginably far away. However, if you do have a planet or a point that passes underneath this starlight at your day, time, and place of birth, you may have a connection to some of this star energy in a embodied or even unconscious way. So another way that I like to describe the energy, or to try and give an analogy, I should say, of the fixed stars is, I hope that in the US or in other parts of the world, wherever you may be watching from, feel free to jot that in the comments. I always find that curious. Where's a girl in Brisbane pulling the people in? But anyway, we've got our downlights. So those lights that are embedded into the ceiling, and it's just a bulb in the ceiling covered by some perspex, or it's not perspex, it's probably fiberglass. And they don't move, they're just there. Whereas you might have a feature light or a dangling light that hangs down and protrudes from the ceiling. So I have this situation in my house. I have downlights throughout, but in the kitchen I have a feature light, and occasionally I bump it. But of course, the fixed lights or the fixed stars in my kitchen, they don't move. But occasionally I bump that feature light. It hangs down quite low, and it reminds me, oh yeah, that's our wandering planets. They will move, still attached to their axis in a sense in terms of the ecliptic. But the downlights, unless I'm pulling them out to change the light bulb, they don't move. And so that's another way to sort of think about the difference. And so when you're researching fixed stars, when you're trying to learn about fixed stars, one of the things that you'll come across is this idea of, say, for example, a particular fixed star being of the nature of, maybe it's Mars and Saturn, or being the nature of Mercury and Venus, or maybe being of the nature of Jupiter and Venus, for example. They're bad training wheels, in my opinion, because when you go back to that diagram, these fixed stars are so unimaginably far away, and the planets dance underneath them. So it's not really possible that a planet that moves constantly can affect something that is so still and so stagnant. And so what happens is when a planet, when you're born, passes under the starlight infuses the planet doesn't inform the star. So the starlight infuses the planet with its mythology, with its lore, with its energy. And so it's going to change to a point. It's going to change or shift the way that that planet in your chart or the angle works. And so it's really going to be some light bulb moments for you, I'm sure, if you discover that you have a fixed star in your chart. I have a few, and it's actually my sect light that is conjoined a fixed star, which I guess made me more curious about fixed stars way back in the day. So why fixed stars are also important in a practical sense is that they can be a timing anchor, indicate timing, and be an anchor to ancient calendar systems. One of those being the lunar mansions, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. So they provide a key part to the celestial world because they are grouped into constellations, which inform the 12 signs. So again, the constellations inform signs, where it's like the star sign of what's the sun's in Cancer now. So the sun in Cancer is informed or inspired by the constellation of Cancer, but they're not one and the same. So due to them being constellational stars, they're very rich in the mythology and the lore, and the fixed star becomes a focal point of that constellational myth. So speaking of the ideas of focal points, is how we define a fixed star is basically when the planet will pass under that, the planet's longitude, I should say, where the zodiacal longitude of a fixed star locates them as a point of reference, making that a sensitive star point. So, your planet is maybe coming into that 15 degrees of Capricorn, then that is a sensitive star point to a fixed star called Vega. So anything that passes along around 9 Gemini is a fixed star point. So point being that their natures, the fixed stars' natures, rather than being like planets, are dependent on their location. So that might be the head, might be the eye, might be the foot, might be the wing, depending on the fixed star constellation you're talking about. So this addition of starlight is going to provide you a huge additional layer of interpretation and meaning to a planet, particularly if you've been like, oh yeah, it kind of works for me in the general descriptions, or maybe it doesn't. That being said, that fixed stars can also work in a way where you might be thinking that a particular planet has no real strength or power in terms of essential dignities. So one example of that could be Mars in Sagittarius. So Mars in Sagittarius has no particular essential dignity, so it's classed as peregrine. But if that Mars in Sag happened to be about 9 Sagittarius, well, that's conjoined the fixed star known as Antares, which is very much a war planet, very martial, very potent and powerful Marsy type energy. So that's definitely going to add an extra flavor to whether it's the moon, whether it's Mercury. If you have got Mercury at 9 Sag, you probably have a way with words that are rather direct. So that's definitely going to change what we would normally say about, say, for example, Mercury in Sag, which would be in detriment. So case in point is stars. The fixed stars outrank planets. That's really important. They are our celestial overlords. So the stars don't get their likeness from the planets. It's the other way around. A lot of material says that certain stars are the nature of planets, but as I said, I would shy away from that. So when it comes to the practicalities of working with fixed stars in the birth chart, conjunctions only. Okay, so there's so many tools that you can use in astrology, but the old adage, too many cooks spoil the broth. So when it comes to fixed stars, they're shining this fixed star light that doesn't move. You want to capture that light as closely as you can. You might have a planet that's near the light, but if the planet's in the light, it's going to be a lot stronger. So conjunctions only, so no sextiles or squares or what have you. 3 degrees, you could allow up to 5 if it's a star of very bright magnitude. So the magnitude will indicate, is it a very bright fixed star or is it quite dim and dull? Sort of saying dull, dill and dumb then, but you get the gist. It's late tonight. So yeah, you want to get that really close. So 3 to 5 degrees max. With a luminary and the star is bright, I would rarely go over 5 degrees in a natal situation. So when we're looking at things from a transiting standpoint, well, you might want to factor in, for example, something a little different when it's a transit. You might highlight it, notice it. So, for example, I think someone in the comments of my other video mentioned something about the Sun conjunct Uranus in Scorpio, 26 degrees, and this big aspect next week, Mars, Uranus, and Algol are going to oppose that. So that's going to be noted for sure, because you're also in the Uranus opposition. So yes, in the I would notice that as a feature of the opposition, a feature of Mars and Uranus opposing your Sun. So there's layers to that. Would I consider Algol opposing the Sun as a natal feature of your birth chart? No. So there's a bit of a distinction there. If Mars is your time lord via profections, would I consider this an energy to pay attention of or to? Yes. Taurus is my current perfected house, and I have a planet. She's a bit shy of Algol, but would I still consider this as an influence for what could happen with this perfection? Yes, possibly. There are things to note. Do I see this as a natal influence? No, I don't. Okay, so I hope that helps to distinguish the difference somewhat between these two energies, the natal chart and the transiting energy. So, yeah, let's have a very quick look at some of, I want to give you 4 stars to start with. And these are probably, if you get nothing else out of fixed stars or you feel that they're not for you, I would suggest try and consider these 4 stars. And these are known as the 4 royal watches. And these 4 stars more or less make a cross across the sky because they form across 10 degrees of Gemini Sag and 0 to 4 degrees of Virgo Pisces. So the difference is because of precession of the equinoxes in terms of their, they're close enough, right? So these stars more or less make the cross, and they're very, very bright. So they were very prominent back in the day in heralding solstices and equinoxes. When I say back in the day, obviously the precession of the equinoxes has shifted that. They also provide tools of navigation and to be able to tell the time at night. The reason they're called the 4 royal stars, they get this context from ancient Persia and their royal grouping. So there's a lot of stories from the Zoroastrian era about the creation of the world and who's going to control it. And so these stars are believed to be implicated in these stories. So they do tend to present this battle for good and evil. They each have their, I guess, more higher or positive or godly meanings. And then, of course, they have their more negative or less desired or more animalistic meanings. Generally, all of these stars tend to bring glory and success, but a nemesis or a great obstacle needs to be overcome in the process. So some of the ways we understand planets is through their light. So Saturn is dim and dark, relates to some of the dull or mundane activities in life. Obviously, Saturn's so much more than that, but it gives you a bit of an indication. And Venus is sparkly and bright. And so she relates to pretty things, attractive things, or things that catch our eye. And so stars, the fixed stars, are the same. So their light and their brightness and their locations are going to tell us something. Hence why these 4 royal watches are pretty important. So Aldebaran is at 9 degrees of Gemini. And so this is in the glowing eye of the red glowing eye of the bull. And so Gemini has lots of qualities. I'm a Gemini rising, so with planets there. So I know Gemini. One quality we do not have is steadfastness, endurance, perseverance, plodding along. But if you have planets or points around the 9, really close to 9, chances are you're not your average Gemini in that respect. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. We're looking at the red eye of the bull. So it's, red, being one-eyed about something, having a one-eyed focus as opposed to focusing on all of the things. It's a slow burn and a stubborn type of focus. So we're really getting a lot more of the Jupiterian, not Jupiterian, because that's where Jupiter is right now, but we're getting more of the sort of Taurian, I should say, qualities coming through, not with all Gemini, but just anything that's super, super close to 9 degrees. So 8, 9, 10, that's it. So if you've got a planet or point at that point, at that 8, 9, 10 of Gemini, let me know in the comments. Do you relate to some of the ideas about the one-eyed bull? A little bit more consistent, determined, long-term progress, less changeable. Maybe you don't get as bored or flit around things as your average Gemini does. So it's still a Gemini planet. Don't forget that. It doesn't become Taurus, but it's got this stellar light, this stellar infusion of light that takes the emphasis of it just as it passes under that particular star. So it makes it special, makes it different to your average Gemini and energy. So the opposite star to that is oh yeah, so I should say with Aldebaran, it's a star of spring and it's new beginnings and it can be quite fecund. So it can be sort of produce the goods in a way that maybe the Gemini energy would maybe fall a little short on. So Antares, 10 Sag. So again, this is another red star, but it's in the heart of the Scorpion. Okay, so you can imagine what that's going to be like. So we've got Sagittarius, but a more stubborn or fixed or a martial quality. If we think about the name Antares, it's like anti-Aries, anti-Mars. So its nature is already in its name. So it's like having this pure dose of Mars, but with the sadness. So like the righteous warrior or passionate and enduring and the willingness to take on conflict, particularly if it may be spiritual, religious, or philosophical, those Sagittarian qualities. It can hold grudges and it wants to win at all cost. So my son has his ascendant at this point, and he has to be the fastest. He's 10, nearly 10. He's coming up for a birthday. He's a Cancer, but he has to be the fastest. He has to be the best. He has to be the strongest. It's that I'm, all of those qualities there. So I've got countless stories of his speed, his strength, but then he'll also go into battle for others so willingly. And that's the more higher energy of that star. So, yeah, soccer god status in this house, according to him. Now, Regulus. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Regulus. Regulus is one of the brightest stars in the sky, and it's now located at 0 degrees of Virgo, but its constellational position is still in Leo, and it's the heart of the lion. So it's a star of courage, it's a star of fame, success, and it's considered to be highly, highly fortunate. It's a great star to incorporate into your talismans, into magical workings. So it's a star of kings, of leaders, and of queens too. I don't have anything there, but it's not necessarily courageous, but having the appearance of courage and strength. So sometimes it can be a little bit all bright, but all show no go, maybe we could say about that. But Regulus can bring eminence, or at least the desire and the desire for that fame. So having a planet conjoined Regulus doesn't necessarily make you famous, but you might have an eminence within your industry, within your community, or you may attract people into your sphere who have that. I could give you plenty of examples that are not the budding president of the USA, but as an example, Courtney Love, so she's got her midheaven at 0 degrees of Leo, but when that midheaven progressed using the technique of secondary progressions, when it progressed to 29 degrees of Leo, she was approximately 29 years old, was about 1994. And that was when Kurt Cobain died. And during that period of her life, she was probably like at the height of her fame, her eminence, but not necessarily for great reasons. But because it was a perfection, it kind of got real high for a time period and then it sort of faded out. If your midheaven, your ascendant is at 29 Leo, 0 Virgo natally, you're living with that energy all of the time. So you might have the ruler of a particular house at that degree. So you might have the ruler of your seventh house who is positioned at 29 Leo, 0 Virgo. You might be married to somebody who is quite well known or quite famous, or you know, whether it's famous on YouTube or some big rock star, depends. But you might know people of that nature. So um, let me just think. So yeah, probably something to, because you know, Regulus gets talked about a lot and probably will be through until election season in the USA. But these stars are so vast, virtuous, and powerful. It's like you're dealing with gods in a sense. And so, generally speaking, we're not really equipped to deal with that level of, or with those qualities. So when these qualities are imbued upon us, we're not always so great at wielding them. So star power literally has its ups and has its downs. And so there can be, you know, if you've reached a certain level, you've reached a certain eminence, a certain level of fame, and you fall from that, you may not be so nice to be around. So if you have anything at Regulus in your chart, let us know in the comments and how you experience that one. So formal halt is at 3 degrees of Pisces. And so this is a blue star, quite appropriate for Pisces, and it's the fish's mouth. And so, again, the location of the star in the constellation is going to tell you a little bit about its energy. And so, what I see show up a lot with Fomalhaut is it's the archetype of the poet, the magician, the writer, the painter, the ability to evoke with words or evoke with images. So it taps into these subtle, watery realms, but with an innate feeling, or sorry, I should say, an innate ability to really understand it. Lyrics to a song, music, a painting, you know, anything very art formy that can just take you to another realm that's almost wordless. It's very sort of mystical and magical, this particular star. So it taps into these subtle realms. So there is one person that I could think that has, it's the sun, or is it the ascendant? That's the ascendant on Fomalhaut. And he's a writer about ancient Scandinavian sorcery and religion. Designs mythical role-playing games. He's a musician, speaks 3 languages. So it's all these sorts of intangible type of talents there. And some of the music is incredibly hypnotic if you are into the Scandinavian vibe. So there's an eminence that comes through the starlight. The eminence of the starlight is through artistry and imagination when it comes to Fomalhaut. So raw stars are bright and obvious. Their effects do show up that way. When you are familiar with some of the stories, some of the lore, some of the key ideas and concepts with fixed stars, you will be so excited to look for them in your birth chart. So you don't have to and like, will this one have influence? Will that one have influence? I guarantee you that if you've got a planet or a point, at least on these 4 stars, there's probably, as I said, a good dozen that I work with on a regular basis, but start with these 4. And I do think you'll be quite amazed at their influence. So I'd love, as always, to hear your comments, your feedback. How do these stars show up for you? I'd love to hear it. All right, see you next time.